Hank Morrison, a 52-year-old retired marine mechanic, inherited his grandfather's 40-acre ranch in Millfield County, Texas. The ranch served as his sanctuary after returning from war and enduring a difficult divorce. Each morning, Hank would sit on the weathered porch, coffee in hand, watching his cattle graze across rolling pastures that had sustained 3 generations of Morrison family members. The land held deep significance. His grandfather had established the working cattle operation in the 1940s, building it into a thriving enterprise that provided beef to local markets throughout East Texas. Hank's father had continued the tradition, expanding the herd and modernizing the operation before passing the legacy to his son. For Hank, the ranch represented peace he had never found elsewhere. The gentle lowing of cattle at dawn, the endless expanse of green fields, and the solitude of rural life offered healing from both combat trauma and personal loss. His daily routine centered on caring for the livestock, maintaining fences, and preserving the agricultural heritage his family had built over decades. However, this tranquil existence would soon face unprecedented challenges. The surrounding countryside, once dominated by similar ranches and farmland, began attracting the attention of developers seeking profitable suburban expansion. Rolling hills that had supported cattle for generations suddenly became prime real estate for upscale housing developments. This transformation would set the stage for a conflict between traditional agricultural life and modern suburban expectations, threatening to destroy everything the Morrison family had built. 2 years earlier, developers had discovered the rolling hills surrounding Morrison's ranch, recognizing their potential for luxury housing development. Within months, construction crews began building McMansions across formerly agricultural land, creating the upscale Millfield Ranch Estates subdivision. The development's rapid growth necessitated the creation of a homeowners association to manage the community's affairs and maintain property standards. The spotlight quickly turned to Karen Rutherford, a local real estate agent who assumed the role of HOA president with unwavering determination. Karen embodied suburban authority, driving her black Escalade through the neighborhood while enforcing association rules with militant precision. Her confrontations with residents became legendary, particularly her driveway encounters where she would demand immediate compliance with HOA standards. Karen's attention soon focused on Hank Morrison's ranch, which bordered the new subdivision. She began making increasingly aggressive demands about his property, claiming that his cattle fencing violated aesthetic standards and that livestock odors negatively impacted property values. Her attempts to impose HOA regulations on land that predated her subdivision by 60 years created the foundation for an escalating conflict. Hank refused to comply with her demands, reminding Karen that agricultural rights laws protected his farming operations. His defiance only intensified Karen's determination to bring his property under HOA control. During this period, Dolores Martinez, a concerned neighbor, began researching Karen's background and discovering troubling patterns in her real estate dealings. The introduction of Karen's husband, Brad, added another dimension to the pressure campaign against Hank. Brad's aggressive personality complemented his wife's authoritarian approach, and together they began coordinating efforts to force Hank's compliance through intimidation and legal pressure, marking the beginning of a systematic harassment campaign. Karen intensified her attacks by filing formal nuisance complaints with Millfield County, presenting what appeared to be evidence of excessive odors, fly infestations, and unsanitary manure conditions. Her staged documentation included photographs taken during carefully orchestrated visits, designed to capture the ranch at its worst moments. The complaints triggered a county inspection, introducing County Inspector Jake Winters into the story. Jake, a fellow Marine veteran and Hank's old military buddy, conducted a thorough investigation of the ranch operations. His inspection not only cleared Hank of all allegations, but also revealed deeper corruption within the local government system. Jake discovered that Karen maintained a romantic relationship with Commissioner Williams, who had been actively pushing for agricultural land rezoning, that would benefit developers at the expense of local farmers. This revelation exposed a coordinated effort to drive Hank from his property through bureaucratic pressure and financial manipulation. Meanwhile, Brad began making unauthorized trespassing attempts onto Hank's property, claiming to conduct safety inspections on behalf of the HOA. Dolores Martinez's continued research uncovered Karen's suspicious interest in Hank's tax records and property assessments. The harassment campaign reached a new level when Hank received a certified letter claiming he owed $3,200 in back taxes, despite his meticulous record-keeping showing all taxes were current. Faced with the threat of property seizure, Hank made the painful decision to liquidate his retirement savings to pay the disputed amount. This moment of financial sacrifice demonstrated his unwavering determination to protect his family's legacy, while also revealing the devastating personal cost of Karen's relentless campaign against his agricultural operation. Recognizing the escalating legal threats, Hank hired attorney Maxine Morgan, who specialized in agricultural law and property rights cases. Maxine immediately began investigating the historical boundaries of Hank's ranch, ordering comprehensive surveys and examining decades-old property records. Her meticulous research uncovered a crucial error in boundary surveys dating back to the 1960s that had never been properly corrected. The discovery revealed that Karen's HOA entrance monument and the subdivision's common recreational area were actually situated on Hank's legally owned property. This boundary error had existed for decades without detection, but its legal implications were profound and immediately actionable. The fraudulent collection of HOA fees from residents for maintenance of common areas that belonged to Hank represented a significant legal liability for Karen and the association. Maxine recognized this discovery as a pivotal turning point in Hank's defense strategy, providing substantial leverage against Karen's escalating attacks on his agricultural operations. The revelation emphasized the critical importance of hiring experienced agricultural attorneys who understand the complexities of rural property law and historical land records. Maxine's expertise in locating and interpreting original survey stakes proved invaluable in establishing the true property boundaries. This discovery fundamentally shifted the dynamic of the conflict from Hank defending his rights to pursue agricultural activities to Karen defending her association's illegal occupation of his land. The boundary revelation marked the crucial transition from a defensive posture to a strategic counterattack, providing Hank with the legal ammunition necessary to challenge Karen's authority and protect his family's ranch from further harassment and intimidation. Karen escalated her harassment campaign through systematic surveillance of Hank's property, installing cameras aimed at his ranch operations and making thinly veiled threats about potential livestock accidents that could result in devastating lawsuits. Her attempts to undermine his agricultural operations included filing false reports with animal control and spreading rumors about unsafe conditions to local farmers and suppliers. However, Karen's increasingly reckless tactics began generating unexpected consequences. Hank's trail cameras, originally installed to monitor cattle, captured Brad cutting through the electric fence separating the ranch from the subdivision. Sheriff Kowalski confirmed this evidence documented criminal trespass and livestock endangerment, as the severed fence could have allowed cattle to wander into traffic or neighboring properties. The criminal evidence provided concrete proof of the harassment campaign's illegal escalation. During this critical period, Dolores Martinez mobilized community support by distributing warnings about Karen's tactics to local residents, farmers, and business owners. Her grassroots campaign exposed Karen's pattern of intimidation and legal manipulation to broader public scrutiny. Local farmers market vendors, and the community feed store began rallying behind Hank, offering both moral and practical support for his fight against HOA overreach. This growing coalition provided essential resources and testimony, documenting Karen's increasingly erratic behavior. The community support demonstrated how Karen's reckless moves were backfiring, building public sympathy for Hank while exposing her strategy to wider examination. Local media began taking notice of the conflict, attracted by the compelling story of a veteran farmer defending his agricultural rights against suburban encroachment. The tide of public opinion was shifting, as residents recognized the dangerous precedent Karen's actions could set for property rights throughout the county. Karen organized an ambitious community safety festival as her boldest attempt to demonstrate HOA authority over Hank's property. She presented doctored survey maps to local vendors and county officials, claiming fraudulent HOA jurisdiction over portions of Hank's ranch. Using this fabricated authority, she authorized the installation of vendor booths, porta-toilets, and even a large DJ booth with sound equipment directly on his private agricultural land. The festival represented an unprecedented escalation in Karen's campaign, demonstrating her willingness to commit outright fraud to achieve her goals. Hank's attorney Maxine Morgan immediately recognized the legal implications of this illegal occupation and began preparing countermeasures including emergency injunctions and criminal trespass charges. Investigative journalist Marcus Thompson, who had been following the story, coordinated with local ranchers to document the festival's illegal setup and Karen's fraudulent claims of authority. Despite Hank's attempt to obtain a court injunction preventing the festival, Karen leveraged her political connections with Commissioner Williams to push the event through the approval process, using falsified documentation. The corrupt relationship between Karen and Williams enabled her to circumvent normal permitting requirements and ignore legitimate property ownership challenges. During this tense period, Dolores Martinez's continued investigation uncovered Karen's true motivation for the festival. She planned to stage a livestock accident involving festival attendees that would generate massive lawsuits and financial liability, ultimately forcing Hank into bankruptcy and property forfeiture. This revelation exposed the calculated nature of Karen's harassment campaign and her willingness to endanger innocent families to achieve her goals. The festival setup created an atmosphere of mounting tension as Hank, supported by his legal team and community allies, prepared for Karen's most dangerous gambit, while hoping to prevent harm to the unsuspecting festival attendees who had no knowledge of the underlying property dispute. During the Community Safety Festival, Karen made a catastrophic decision that would ultimately destroy her credibility and expose her reckless endangerment of innocent families. Determined to prove her claims about livestock safety concerns, she personally led a group of festival attendees, including several families with young children, directly into Hank's bull pasture without permission or proper safety precautions. Karen opened the pasture gate herself, dismissing the clearly posted warning signs and ignoring the obvious danger presented by Thunder, Hank's prize breeding bull, and his companions. Her complete misinterpretation of the bull's warning behavior, the pawing, snorting, and defensive positioning that any experienced rancher would recognize as clear threats, demonstrated her dangerous ignorance of livestock management. When Thunder charged toward the group, his protective instincts triggered by the perceived invasion of his territory, festival attendees fled in panic, screaming and stumbling as they ran for safety. Crucially, Thunder did not actually harm anyone, but the chaos and terror he created among the fleeing families exposed Karen's criminal negligence and complete disregard for public safety. Marcus Thompson recorded every moment of the incident, capturing undeniable evidence of Karen's deliberate endangerment of innocent families for her personal vendetta against Hank. The footage showed Karen's reckless leadership, her dismissal of safety warnings, and the resulting panic among festival attendees who had trusted her judgment. This incident represented the climactic moment where Karen's arrogance and obsession with controlling Hank's property collided with the harsh reality of agricultural operations, creating irrefutable evidence of her unfitness for any position of authority or responsibility. Attorney Maxine Morgan's investigation reached its ultimate revelation when she discovered that Karen's HOA charter had actually expired 2 years earlier, rendering all of her recent actions completely illegal and without any legitimate authority. This discovery meant that Karen had been operating a fraudulent organization, illegally collecting fees from homeowners and issuing citations without any legal standing whatsoever. The evidence of systematic fraud included illegal fee collection, unauthorized fines, and documented kickbacks to Commissioner Williams in exchange for favorable zoning decisions that benefited Karen's real estate business at the expense of agricultural landowners. FBI agent Sarah Rodriguez entered the investigation, confirming that federal authorities had been monitoring Karen's activities as part of a broader investigation into HOA fraud and public corruption throughout the region. Agent Rodriguez's involvement legitimized the serious criminal nature of Karen's actions and provided access to federal resources for prosecuting complex fraud cases. The investigation revealed how fraudulent HOA operations typically function: expired or invalid charters, unauthorized fee collection, fabricated authority over properties outside their jurisdiction, and corrupt relationships with local officials who facilitate illegal activities in exchange for financial benefits. Karen's obsession with Hank's property had caused her to create an extensive paper trail documenting her fraudulent activities, providing prosecutors with overwhelming evidence of criminal intent and systematic abuse of authority. Marcus Thompson's investigative journalism perfectly complemented the federal investigation, with his coverage timed to maximize public exposure of Karen's crimes while the legal evidence was being compiled. The convergence of legal, federal, and media attention created an insurmountable case against Karen's fraudulent HOA operation, ensuring that her years of harassment and illegal activity would finally face appropriate consequences through both criminal prosecution and civil liability. Karen's downfall unfolded in spectacular public fashion as parents who had witnessed the bull pasture incident, local farmers who had suffered her harassment, and media outlets covering the story all turned against her simultaneously. Sheriff Kowalski, attorney Maxine Morgan, and journalist Marcus Thompson coordinated their efforts to present overwhelming evidence of Karen's criminal activities to both legal authorities and the court of public opinion. Process servers delivered multiple lawsuits to Karen's residence, including criminal charges, civil liability claims, and federal fraud accusations that collectively represented millions of dollars in potential damages and decades of possible prison time. Commissioner Williams was placed under federal investigation for his role in facilitating Karen's fraudulent activities, with FBI agents seizing his financial records and communications. The Millfield Ranch Estates HOA was formally dissolved by court order, with all assets frozen pending restitution to defrauded homeowners. Karen's public meltdown became the final nail in her credibility coffin, as she made desperate accusations against Hank federal agents and even her own neighbors while inadvertently confessing to additional crimes during her emotional outbursts. Her attempts to blame others for her criminal activity only provided prosecutors with additional evidence of her guilt and criminal intent. The dramatic shift from Karen's intimidation tactics to her facing genuine accountability marked the complete destruction of her authority and influence. Local residents who had once feared her retribution now openly celebrated her downfall, recognizing that her removal would restore peace and property rights to their community. The cleanup process following Karen's downfall was comprehensive and far-reaching. Karen submitted her resignation from all positions before facing criminal charges, while Commissioner Williams was suspended pending federal investigation into corruption and fraud charges. The dissolved HOA was required to issue full refunds to homeowners who had paid illegal fees, with interest and penalties adding substantial costs to the final settlement. Hank's ranch gained complete legal clarity regarding his property boundaries, including formal recognition of his ownership of the disputed 2 acres that had contained the HOA's entrance monument and common areas. A class action lawsuit filed by affected homeowners secured significant financial restitution from Karen's real estate business and personal assets, ensuring that her victims received compensation for their losses and suffering. Conservation easements were established on Hank's property to protect the agricultural land for future generations, preventing any future attempts at forced development or subdivision. The ranch began thriving once again, with community festivals held with proper permits and enthusiastic support from local residents who now appreciated Hank's agricultural contributions to their community. The case inspired broader reforms throughout Texas, including new state legislation requiring stricter oversight of HOA operations, mandatory verification of charter validity, and enhanced penalties for fraudulent association activities. The Morrison Ranch case became a model for property rights advocates nationwide, demonstrating how determined landowners could successfully challenge HOA overreach through proper legal representation and community support. Hank's final reflection focused on defending his grandfather's legacy, while providing valuable lessons for property owners facing similar challenges. His successful fight against HOA abuse proved that individual rights could prevail against organized intimidation, inspiring continued vigilance against association overreach throughout rural America.